I want to translate this into a horsemanship position. I want you to pretend like you're sitting in the saddle. So I want you to close your eyes. I want you to feel your horse underneath you. I want you to feel that your seat is sitting down nice and deep. Your back is not arched with your pelvis tipped forward. Your back is not rounded with your pelvis pointing back. You're just in a neutral spine position, okay? I want you to feel that your feet are even in the stirrups. Your spine is being lengthened with the string, and that your elbows are bent with your hands straight out in front of your elbows. So in that horsemanship position, okay? Let's create torque. So I want you to pretend that you're holding a bar in your hands, and you're going to maintain a horsemanship position with your hands, but I want you to think about breaking that stick, okay? I want you to think about breaking it in half. And what this is going to do for you is this is going to create torque in your shoulders. This is going to bring your shoulders into an externally rotated position. You should feel your elbows staying nice and soft by your sides, and you should feel strength in your forearms. This is your horsemanship position. This is what you need to do in the saddle. This is what you need to do to ride effectively. And the reason why is, one, it just puts you in a classic, strong, elevated, confident look, right? That's the look that everybody's looking for. But more than that, it's really functional. Because I'm engaged with my muscles, it's really easy for me to maintain connection with my horse and communicate with my horse. Welcome to Elevate Your Ride, the podcast dedicated to elevating your performance in the saddle. I'm Ellie, your personal trainer.
And I'm Lauren, your mindset coach.
Hey, all you fitness nerds. Welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Supple Leopard. I want to preface this episode by saying that fitness is a journey, and you think you might know everything. You think that you might be gaining some traction. You're getting better. You're getting stronger. And then you learn a new principle and you feel like you don't know anything, right? And that, I think, is what this chapter is going to be about. So in the previous chapters, we've been talking about, making sure that you engage your core muscles correctly, you're breathing correctly, teaching you how to load your body and align your joints and all those things. And this episode is going to get quite a bit more technical. We're going to be talking a lot about torque. So torque is the force that is generated by your muscles. And I think that that's something that we don't really think a whole lot about when we first start exercising and when we're first creating a relationship with our body, right? Like, we first just focus on, can we get our spine to be straight and stabilized? Can we get our muscles and joints to be where we want them to be? And then as you kind of figure those things out, if your muscles aren't creating enough torque, so not enough tension, not enough stability, that's when injuries happen. So you might start finding, if you're at a certain point in your journey, that you're making progress, but you're starting to get some odd aches and pains, and you're starting to, maybe you feel like you tore a muscle a little bit here and there. There can be this weird spot in your fitness where you're making progress and you're getting stronger, but you're kind of coming up with these weird little injuries. And so if you relate to any of that, or even if you don't, I suggest listening to this episode. Another thing is, when you're learning about your muscles, you know that they should be working, but what does that actually mean? What does a muscle actually working mean? And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. So like I said, it's going to be fairly technical. I just want you to follow along. Listen, do your best. This is a complicated topic that I'm still even learning about as a coach, and I've been a personal trainer for going on 5 years now. So this is complicated, this is complex, but this concept of creating torque is really important for creating a body that is as injury and pain-free as we can possibly make it. So if that's something that you're interested in, then keep on listening. I'm going to start right off with a quote from the book. So, I define a functional movement as one that requires you to prioritize spinal mechanics and initiate movement from your hips and shoulders. When you squat, for example, you brace your spine first and initiate the movement by sitting your hips back slightly and flexing your knees and ankles. For an exercise movement that you perform in the gym to be considered functional, it should be transferable, meaning that it is applicable to real world activities and caters to your individual goals as an athlete. Take the squat as an example. Learning how to squat teaches you how to stabilize your hips in a good position and provides a blueprint for sitting down and getting up out of a chair. It also builds strength and power, critical attributes that all athletes must acquire. End quote. So I want to talk about this. Your movements that you do as an equestrian in the gym to get stronger in the saddle should reflect the goals that you have in the saddle, but they don't have to mimic them specifically. Like, I don't need you to get set up on a yoga ball with your legs spread apart and anchoring a band out in front of you and you holding it like reins, right? Like, we're going to be practicing movements that somewhat mimic what we do in the saddle, but I don't need you to get out a saddle on a rack and have a fake horse that you're working on. Like, that's not what it needs to look like. What it needs to look like is when you're practicing movements, you want to think about how this transfers to what you're doing in the saddle. And you want to think about creating stability, creating strength, practicing those movements. Practice makes perfect. And the more that we can practice the movements to be in the gym for what you want them to be like in the saddle, then that is positive, right? So something that I really want to point out that is super, super common, sometimes people get a lot of knee pain in the saddle. And I kind of want to address knee pain in general. So I am just a personal trainer, not a physical therapist. I'm not a doctor. But from my knowledge and from my expertise with my clients and then knowing my own body, I think that a lot of knee pain comes from a lack of stability and strength through the hips and through the glutes, especially. And if somebody tells me that they're having a lot of knee pain in the saddle, I automatically want to see them do like some squats and some lunges. And I want to see if they're having the knee pain in those movements as well. And I can pretty much guarantee that they are going to have that pain. It is very rare, if not impossible, for your pain to be only isolated to something in the saddle. If we look in the right places, we can figure out how to make that pain show up in the gym as well. And if we can find that pain in the gym, then we can address it, right? We've talked about that a couple times in this book is when you have pain, this book is giving you a framework for how to address that pain and how to keep it from continuing on, right? So I want to take posting, for example, okay? A posting movement is supposed to resemble closer to a hip hinge or almost like a deadlift more than a squat. So if you watch a rider go do a posting trot and you notice that they have a lot of ankle movement and lower leg movement that is specifically coming from the knee. So when they go up into the rising trot, the ankle shoots forward or it moves laterally or it just gets unsteady, right? And the problem becomes that the rider then might try to create stability from the knee, right? Because the lower leg is swinging from the knee. So then the rider thinks, oh, I must need to put more pressure in my knee to keep my lower leg more stable. And that is unfortunately just not accurate. And that a lot of time is what causes knee pain in the saddle. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be coming from a posting trot. So think about like a classic equitation or horsemanship rider. Your coach is typically going to want to see you have a full range of motion and capability through your ankles, but they'd want you to be moving your ankles when it's relevant to a training cue for the horse, right? Like we don't want to just see the ankles having a lot of range of motion and bouncing around uncontrollably. We want to have controlled range of motion, controlled strength through the ankle. And I find that that truly doesn't come from the ankle itself. Yes, we need to have full range of motion through our lower leg and full strength and everything, but I really find that this instability is coming from instability in the hips. So something that this chapter is going to talk about a lot is the importance of external rotation or torque through the hips. And when we lose that external rotation or that torque through our hips, we get unstable through the leg, and that tends to cause a lot of knee pain. And like I said, we don't want to think about taking that knee pain away by creating a lot of tension through the knee. We want to create it by creating more strength and stability and torque through our hips. So that is going to be kind of the main focus point of this episode. So if that's something that you're struggling with, keep listening. Another point that I want to point out that's super common is back pain, either from workouts or from riding in general. And kind of the same thing. If we don't have good glute strength, good core strength, then our spine does not stabilize well. And that's where that pain comes from. If that's something that you relate to, keep on listening. One more thing that I want to point out. If you are, again, starting your fitness journey, whether it's with me as your coach or on your own, something that's really, really important is to focus on things in the correct order. Okay. You have to have mobility first, stability second, and strength third. If you try to rearrange those or skip steps, your fitness is not going to progress the way that you want it to, and you're going to get injuries. So when I see a client that comes to me, I'm going to focus first on, do they have proper range of motion in all their joints, and are those joints stable? If the answer is yes, then I can move on to strength training. If the answer is no for either mobility or stability, then I have to address those first as a coach. And if we can't address those, then we can't go on to strength training. So that could be something that's really frustrating for newbies, is they, start working out and they're like, well, I just want to get stronger. And it's like, I get that, but we have to address these issues first. Otherwise, you're more susceptible to injury. So if that sounds familiar, if that sounds like something that you've thought in the past, again, keep listening, and this will explain why you cannot focus on the strength first. The strength has to come last. Okay, so gonna go back to a quote from the book. Most people don't even know that flexing and extending the spine is potentially harmful. People spend their entire life using their spine as a hinge, rounding their back every time they need to bend over, or tilting their ribcage back anytime they raise their arms above chest level. While these spinal faults may seem relatively harmless, they add up over time and become movement patterns. This is why so many people struggle to keep their back flat when simple movements are introduced. Initiating movement from the back has been hardwired into their motor program. This problem becomes even bigger when formal training exercises are added, because those exercises require you to maintain spinal stiffness through a full range of motion. In other words, you need to be able to lower into the bottom of a squat, press a barbell up overhead, and set up for a deadlift without defaulting into a flexed or overextended spinal position. Remember, your spine is not designed to handle loaded, flexed, or extended positions. The musculature surrounding your spine is designed to create stiffness, again, so that you can effectively transmit energy from your hips and shoulders. Okay, I'm going to pause the quote. So this is why back pain and injuries are so common. So what this chapter is really going to go into is how your hips and your shoulders are supposed to mobilize and take the load of whatever it is that you're doing. I don't care if you're flipping a hay bale over, hanging up hay high up in your horse's stall, throwing a saddle onto your horse, loading the trailer, riding. I don't care what it is. Your spine is not actually supposed to be moving a whole ton. It's supposed to be fairly straight and fairly stable. It's your hips and your shoulders that are supposed to be absorbing the motion and creating the force and the tension. Your spine is supposed to be relatively stable and not moving a whole ton. And like the classic horsemanship look, it is that, right? You're supposed to have a pretty straight spine that is stable, and your hips and your shoulders are really supposed to be what's doing the movement. Now, I know when you think classic horsemanship, if you don't know a whole ton about it or you're not very advanced in it, you might think, well, I thought I'm not supposed to move in horsemanship, and that's not true at all. If you watch the level 3 riders, like Lauren, for example, you can look up her 2020 AQHA World Champion horsemanship pattern and watch it on YouTube. If you really watch what her body is doing, her body is moving a lot. Her hips are moving a lot. Now, you might say, well, but her shoulders aren't moving a whole lot. But her shoulders are in an open, externally rotated position, meaning that her shoulders are working, and they're working to help stabilize her spine and keep a strong, open posture that is also connected to her horse. So the classic horsemanship look is really about form to function for making your body work as effectively as possible. And that's probably why it's my favorite class, is because I can relate to the horsemanship in working out, And I practice my horsemanship movements in my workouts. If I'm not holding a dumbbell, I'm always in my horsemanship position. And I'm focused on, can I keep my spine straight and out of the movement? Can I keep my hips moving? Can I keep my glutes engaged? Can I maintain connection through my body? Like, if you're a client of mine, you're probably like, oh, I hear her say those words all the time. And it's true. Like I said in the beginning, I don't need you to full on recreate the movements that are in riding. I need you to think about the riding principles like connection, stability, strength, range of motion, control. Those are the things that we're going to focus on in your workouts. Hi, everyone. It's your personal trainer, Ellie. If you're looking to become a stronger, more balanced, and flexible rider, I'm here to help. I offer virtual personal training sessions and customized workout plans that you can complete on your own. As a fellow competitor, I understand the physical demands riding requires, and my goal is to help you perform your best for your horse, whether you're preparing for a show or just want to improve your everyday rides. Visit lopeanddowntherailfitness.com or click on my website tab in the notes of this podcast episode to learn more. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
Are you looking for that extra competitive edge, struggling with show pin anxiety, or looking to set and achieve meaningful goals with your horse? Schedule a session with me, Lauren, your dedicated mindset coach. As an experienced competitor, I understand the mental demands required to excel at the highest level, and I'm here to support you in building a plan to help you stay accountable and reaching those goals. For more information, check out laurencervelli.com or click on the website link in our show notes. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the book. The process for creating a stable shoulder position is the same for creating a stable hip position. That is, the hips and the shoulders abide by the same laws of torque. This is because they function in much the same way. Both are ball and socket joints, and they have a ton of rotational capacity and are designed to handle freakish amounts of flexion and extension load. You will learn how to create tension and organize your hips and shoulders in a good position to avoid movement errors. But first, it's important to understand that for the majority of movements, specifically formal training movements, you want to load the primary engines of your hips and shoulders first, because the tissues and joints that get loaded first during a movement get loaded maximally, so meaning the most, during movement. In other words, the joint that you move first will carry the lion's share of the load, which is your body weight plus any weight that you're lifting, as you execute the movement. I'm going to end the quote. Okay, so I'm going to explain this a little bit further. The body part that you move first is going to be what carries the brunt of your load. So let's talk about a squat, okay? So if I want to protect my spine and my knees, I need to make sure that the first thing that moves in my squat is what? What do you think it is? It's your hips. Hopefully you guessed that right. If you didn't, that's okay. So I want to think about in my movements, I almost want you to think about tearing up your hips and protecting your knees and your spine. Okay, so if I stand up and if I do a strong horsemanship position, and let's go through that bracing sequence that we talked about in the last episode. So I want to be standing up nice and tall. I want to keep my head directly over my shoulders right over my hips right over my knees right over my feet. I want to think about lengthening my spine. So I'm going to use that classic analogy that horse trainers use all the time. I'm going to pretend that there's a string attached to my head and there's somebody above me pulling it straight up. Okay, so I'm lengthening my spine. But I want to make sure as I'm lengthening my spine that I don't get any movement fault patterns. I don't want my spine to arch. I don't want my glutes to disengage. I don't want my shoulders to round forward. I don't want my arches to collapse in. I want to maintain a strong athletic position through my body. So let's go through what those are. I want to make sure that the muscles in the backs of my shoulders and my upper back are holding my shoulders in an open position. So pretend that you're riding your horse and you want to maintain that classic horsemanship look. Okay, this is what I want your shoulders to feel like. I want them to feel open and strong through the back. I am going to think about my core muscles being engaged, and I'm going to do that by first creating external rotation through my hips. So I want you to take a look down at your hips really quick, and I want you to Bring your knees closer together, and I want you to look at what that does to your hips. This puts your hips in an internally rotated position. I want you to notice how you probably feel really awkward standing here. Like your arches are collapsed, your little toes are lifting off the ground. You have a lot of pressure on the inside of your knee and the inside of your hips. Like it just feels awkward and unathletic. Okay. And I want you to do the opposite. I want you to look at how your hips are pointing towards each other, and I want you to do the opposite. I want you to point your hips away from each other. And as you do that, you should feel glute engagement. You should feel strength and stability through the muscles in your legs. You should feel a strong arch through your feet. You should feel even pressure spread throughout all your toes. This is the external rotation that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the book. So, anytime that you hear the word external rotation through the hips, this is what I mean. Okay. This is your bread and butter for what you should be practicing in the gym. If this is a hard movement for you, you need to work on your external rotational ability. So you can look up external rotational movements just on Google and start there and just start doing them. Some examples would be hip abductions, banded lateral walks, doing squats with bands around your knees, that hip abduction machine at the gym. That's one of the very, very few times that I'll recommend using a machine at the gym. Usually I don't think they're that great, but I think that they're great for creating abductor strength, which are your abductors or your external rotator muscles of your hips. So we want to create abductor strength, abductor, not adductor. Adductor is your inner thigh muscles, your internal rotators. I don't really want to focus on strengthening those a whole lot. They're still an important piece of daily movement and riding. We just use them so much in our riding that we really don't need to worry about strengthening them a whole lot. I'm worried about strengthening our abductors, okay? All right. So, back to a quote from the book. To stabilize your limbs in a good position and preserve spinal stability, you need to create tension in your hip and shoulder systems. You do so by generating torque. Consider a power lifter setting up underneath a bar loaded with 800 pounds to perform a back squat. To move such a staggering amount of weight and avoid collapsing under the load, he has to brace his spine and generate torque by externally rotating his hips and shoulders. To create tension in his upper back and set his shoulders in a stable, tight position, he grips the bar just outside the shoulder's width and then twists his hands into the bar as if he were trying to bend the bar in half. To stabilize the structures of his lower body, he creates an external rotational force from his hips by screwing both feet into the ground, keeping his feet straight and parallel to each other as if he were trying to spread a crack in the floor. Bracing his spine and generating torque in this manner is the only way the power lifter can complete the lift without injury. If his knees collapse inward or his back bent with 800 pounds perched on his shoulders, not completing the lift would be the least of his worries. In short, torque enables the power lifter to stabilize his position and minimize variability in movement, meaning that he can keep his back flat and maintain tension in his hips and shoulders, preventing potentially disastrous movement faults. If he does not generate torque, his body will find stability for him by defaulting into a bad position. I call this tension hunting. When you fail to generate torque, you create an open circuit that your body closes down immediately by committing a local extension spinal fault, flaring out at the elbows, collapsing your ankles, bringing your knees inward. In part 2, we're going to learn more about these common faults and how to correct them. So what is torque, you might ask? Torque is turning force. It's the amount of energy that you need to turn a wrench or open a jar. When it comes to the human body, I use the word torque to describe the turning force generated by the hips and shoulders, which causes the limbs to rotate. Another way to think of torque is as a rotational force being applied to an object. For example, when you internally or externally rotate from your hip or shoulder while keeping your hand or foot anchored to a surface, such as the floor or an object such as a barbell, you're generating torque. This rotational force turns on the musculature that stabilizes your joints in a good position. If you've experimented with the bracing sequence, you already know what it feels like to generate torque. When you externally rotate from your hips while keeping your feet straight and rooted to the floor, you can feel the tension in your lower body. Your glutes fire, your hips lock into place, and your feet come into an arch. This is how you generate torque from your hips while standing. It is also the most stable position for your ankles, knees, and hips. As a reminder, screw your feet into the ground means that you exert an outward force with your feet while keeping them in the same position. You're not turning them outward, you're just exerting force in an outward direction. So, next, we're going to go over some universal cues for creating a stable hip position. So, screwing your feet into the ground, spin your feet as if they were on dinner plates, spread the floor, and shove your knees out. So, something I want to point out about these, which we are going to get into a little bit later in the book, but I kind of want to talk about it now, is if you ask for more torque than is necessary, that is not good also. So you wanna create enough torque based on whatever movement you're doing, but you don't wanna ask for too much. And that is something that I have been experiencing lately. I've been trying to generate more torque through my hips during my daily life. And I've actually started to notice that I've developed some knee pain because I've been doing it too much. I've been asking for more torque than is necessary. And so now I'm kind of trying to find somewhere in the middle. So this is something that I'm playing around with. Been playing around with it for a couple of months. I still haven't fully figured it out in my own body. So it's not easy, is my point. And that's why I said in the beginning that fitness is a journey and you think you know everything and then you learn something new and then you feel like you don't know anything. Like this part of the journey. Okay. All right. Universal cues for creating a stable shoulder position. Break or bend the bar. Keep your elbows in. Armpits are forward when you're pressing something up over your head, and elbow pits are forward when you're doing a push-up. These common strength and conditioning cues remind us of two things. Our bodies are set up for rotation, and we need to generate a rotational force in order to create stable positions from which we move. Just as screwing your feet into the ground stabilizes your hips, screwing your hands into the ground stabilizes your shoulders. For example, if you're setting up for a push-up, you screw your left hand into the ground in a counterclockwise direction, and you screw your right hand into the ground into a clockwise direction. Again, you're not actually turning them outward, you're just exerting an outward rotational force. This is how you create torque to stabilize your wrists, elbows, and shoulders in a good position when you're pressing against a solid surface like the floor. And then imagine you're trying to bend, or better yet, break a pliable stick in half while holding it out in front of your body. To accomplish this task, you need to twist both hands into the stick, rotating your left hand in a counterclockwise direction and your right hand in a clockwise direction, while externally rotating your shoulders. This is exactly how you stabilize your shoulders when you grasp an object such as a barbell. In fact, coaches have been cueing athletes to break the bar as a way of stabilizing the shoulders for ages. If you're setting up for a bench press or a shoulder press, actively trying to bend the bar creates torque, which stabilizes your wrists, elbows, and shoulders in a good position. Hey, Elevate Your Ride fans. I wanted to take a moment to thank our very first gold sponsor, Hobby Horse Clothing Company. If you're looking for a cost effective way to elevate your look at the horse show, check out what Hobby Horse has to offer. From budget friendly crystal jackets to simple show shirts to stylish lifestyle tops, Hobby Horse has everything you need to look your best. Make sure you use code EYR2025 for an additional 10% off at checkout. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to Elevate Your Ride. We're so excited to continue helping you elevate your performance in the saddle. To keep bringing you quality content and information, we're asking you to help us. Tell your friends about us on our podcast, like and share a meaningful quote you saw on our social media, write us a review on Spotify or Facebook. You can also join our Facebook group and ask all your health and fitness questions, or maybe post a success story to motivate another amateur. Your engagement really helps us support and encourage the equestrian community. We're also inviting sponsors and supporters to help us build our show. As a sponsor, starting at just $150, you'll receive marketing on our podcast, website, and growing social media platforms for your business. It's the perfect way to connect with the equestrian community and showcase your brand to our dedicated listeners. And for our supporters, your $50 contribution gets you a shout out on our social media and website. Every bit of support really helps fuel the show and helps us inspire and motivate equestrians. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can scroll down to the show notes of this episode and look for the become a supporter or become a sponsor links and click on those to get some more information. Thank you for listening. We can't wait to continue expanding our platform and helping you elevate your ride.
Hey, Elevate Your Ride fans. Are you loving our show and looking for a way to show your support? Check out our line of Elevate Your Ride merchandise. From stylish t shirts to cozy hoodies to journals and hats, we have everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Ready to gear up? Click on the Buy Our Merchandise Here link in the podcast notes, or head on over to our website, elevateyourride.co, and click on the Store tab. Thank you for your support. Make sure to like, follow, and share our platform with your friends.
Gonna pause the quote. I want to translate this into a horsemanship position. I want you to pretend like you're sitting in the saddle. So I want you to close your eyes. I want you to feel your horse underneath you. I want you to feel that your seat is sitting down nice and deep. Your back is not arched with your pelvis tipped forward. Your back is not rounded with your pelvis pointing back. You're just in a neutral spine position, okay? I want you to feel that your feet are even in the stirrups. Your spine is being lengthened with the string, and that your elbows are bent with your hands straight out in front of your elbows. So in that horsemanship position, okay? Let's create torque. So I want you to pretend that you're holding a bar in your hands, and you're going to maintain a horsemanship position with your hands. But I want you to think about breaking that stick, okay? I want you to think about breaking it in half. And what this is going to do for you is this is going to create torque in your shoulders. This is going to bring your shoulders into an externally rotated position. You should feel your elbows staying nice and soft by your sides, and you should feel strength in your forearms. This is your horsemanship position. This is what you need to do in the saddle. This is what you need to do to ride effectively. And the reason why is, one, it just puts you in a classic, strong, elevated, confident look, right? That's the look that everybody's looking for. But more than that, it's really functional. Because I'm engaged with my muscles, it's really easy for me to maintain connection with my horse and communicate with my horse. So let's pretend that I'm holding the reins. I am a little untraditional. I hold my reins in the right hand, but a lot of people hold them in their left. So I'm sitting here in a horsemanship position, and my right hand is a little closer to my belly button than my left hand is because I'm holding the reins in my right hand. And I want you to just relax, like stay in this horsemanship position, but I want you to stop generating the torque. And I just want you to feel how, like, your hand just feels like loosey-goosey. Like, I want you to think about how you just don't feel connected here. Like, yes, you're in the position, but my hand, I can move it left and right to loose. There's no connection to my core muscles. There's no connection to the rest of my body. Like, it just feels awkward to me. Now, let's generate the torque, okay? So I'm going to think about externally rotating my shoulders. I feel my elbows being right next to my sides, but they're soft. They're not harsh. And then here, I can feel that my hand is actually connected to my core. I can feel that if I go to move my hand, it doesn't feel loosey-goosey. It feels connected to the rest of my body. And I can picture that I'm connected to my horse's mouth with my hand. Like, I can feel if they move their mouth a little bit. I can feel if they move their head left or right. And I can counteract that either with my hand or with the rest of my body really easily because I'm already engaged. I'm already right there. I don't need to necessarily be tight against my horse's mouth. I don't need to hold pressure against the horse's mouth, but it's connection. There's a string attached from my hand to the horse's mouth. That's my reins. And I want to maintain connection to those reins. I don't want them to be loosey-goosey, okay? So if you're listening to this thinking, how does this apply to me? I promise it does. Another thing, so we're talking about the shoulders right now, but same thing. If I want to maintain connection through my leg to the horse, how do you think I'm going to do that? I'm going to generate torque through my hips. If you watch the Aaron Moseses, the Blake Weisses, Anthony Montes, the really, really good either pleasure or all-around trainers, those are really, really strong riders. And if you look at their legs are in an externally rotated position. They have fantastic torque through their hips while also maintaining stability, a good range of motion. That's why they're such great riders, is because they have such phenomenal hip control and hip strength and hip mobility. That's what you're trying to create. If I can create torque through my hips, I can have connection through my feet. Like, think about those riders and how their feet are stable and they're dynamic, but they don't move without them wanting them to move, right? Like, their ankles aren't flopping around. They're not moving when they don't want them to. They're not static, right? They do move, but they move when the rider wants them to. They move in a controlled manner. That's because they have good torque through their hips. Did I just blow your mind? I really hope that I blew your mind. If I didn't, rewind and listen to like the last 5 minutes. Okay, so back to the book. As I mentioned in chapter 2, your hips and shoulders are ball and socket joints that are very similar in function. This is why the cues for creating stable shoulders are essentially the same for those creating stable hips. Screwing your feet into the ground stabilizes your hips, while screwing your hands into the ground stabilizes your shoulders. Why do you need to generate rotational force to create stability in the primary engines of your hips and shoulders? Simple. There is slack within these ball and socket joints that allows for the full movement of your limbs. To make the joint stable and maintain a brace neutral spine, you need to wind up, twist, and spiral your limb into your hip or shoulder socket. In other words, when you create torque, you activate the musculature to support the joint. When you fail to create torque, you essentially hang on your tissues and rely on your tendons and ligaments to support this position. End quote. Oh my God, just even reading that last sentence just made me cringe. You know how sometimes when you do a movement, it just feels like your body is just not doing what you want it to, and the muscles aren't engaged and you're just straining things, and it just makes you feel icky. Like, it just makes like a shiver down my spine when I think about that. That's how injuries happen, okay? When we don't create torque through our muscles, that's when we hurt our joints, hurt our ligaments, hurt our tendons, because our muscles are not doing their jobs, okay? I always tell people, tear up your muscles, protect your joints. That is what eating sufficient protein is for, is to build muscles back up. That's why recovery is so important, is because when you're working out, you're literally creating micro tears in your muscles. And getting adequate recovery, so enough sleep and fueling your body with high protein, high quality food, that's how you're going to repair your body. So when you're working out, tear those muscles up, but make sure you have torque in them. Don't tear them up without torque, because then that's how you're going to strain a muscle, right? We don't want to strain our muscles. That's not good either. We want to tear up our muscles in a correct position. I hope that makes sense. I think that's all that I'm going to read from the book. If you're interested in learning more about these, the book gets way more technical in here than I'm going to. If you want to learn more about this, I do suggest getting the book and diving into it deeper by reading it yourself, because there's a lot of images in here that are really helpful, and I suggest that would be good. If you just want like the Cliff Note version, which is why you're listening to this podcast episode in the first place, I recommend working on mobilizing, stabilizing, and strengthening your external rotators of your shoulders and of your hips. Let's talk about how you're actually going to achieve this. First, we need to work on the mobility. So if you lack mobility in your shoulders and your hips, you're not going to be able to do any of what I just talked about. You're not going to be able to generate torque because the mobility is not there. And if you lack mobility there and try to create the torque anyway, you're going to create movement pattern faults, which is how we create injury, right? Work on your shoulder mobility, work on your hip mobility. If you just look up exercises on Google, I would start there. I would do 90-90s. I would do hip circles. I would do hip flexor stretching. I would do glute strengthening exercises. That's going to be how you get your hips more mobile in general. And then for the shoulders, I would do arm circles. I would do chest stretching. I would do just any sort of shoulder mobility that Google pops up with is going to be just fine. Make sure that when you're working on your shoulder mobility, especially, that you're maintaining a neutral spine. So watch yourself sideways in a mirror and make sure that your spine isn't moving with your shoulders. So it's super common for people who lack shoulder mobility that if they go to do an arm circle, as soon as the arms get up over their head, their back wants to arch or overextend. And so you want to be careful that you're not doing that. That's how we're going to do those first. And then second is we need to think about stabilizing those muscles. So you want to do exercises with like resistance bands or body weight exercises that are going to focus on generating torque through those movements. You could, again, just look up resistance band strengthening exercises for your hips and for your shoulders and just kind of go through what they have there and make sure that you're generating that torque through those movements. So I would be doing a lot of resistance band work, light dumbbell work, just focusing on keeping torque through those shoulder muscles through a full range of motion. That's going to be how you're going to create that stability. And then same thing through your hips. You can just look up hip stability exercises. So those are going to be things like single leg squats, side lying hip abductions, things like that, where you're focused on creating torque through the movement. And then once you feel like you can have a full range of motion and generate torque and have stability, then you can start strengthening more. Then you can start doing overhead presses and squats and hip thrusts and dumbbell chest press, like all those strengthening exercises to keep strengthening those areas. And if you need help with any of that, that's where working with me really comes in handy. And I know it's hard because I try not to give out a whole ton of exercises over the podcast. One, I think it's kind of hard to explain without you being able to see me. And two, I think that it is challenging to give you specific exercises without seeing what your body needs. And I know I would hate that if I was listening to this podcast and I was like, well, where do I even start? And it's so hard because it just depends on your body and it depends on where you're lacking mobility, stability, or strength. And so that's part of what me reading this book is about, is teaching you how to self-assess and how to know what your body needs. But if you need help, I suggest reaching out to me and I'll be able to help you much more. So I really hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode. This is, I think, my favorite Becoming a Supple Leopard episode that I've done so far. So thank you for following along this series. Share with another fitness nerd that you know that's trying to become a better, stronger, more connected rider to their horse. And good luck in the gym. You got this.
Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, all linked in the podcast notes. We'll see you next time. The information provided by Elevate Your Ride is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical or professional advice. While we discuss health and fitness topics related to equestrians, the content provided through this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. The views expressed by the host and guests on Elevate Your Ride are their own and should not be taken as professional guidance. We strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, but we cannot guarantee that the information will be applicable to every individual listener or that it reflects the most current research or guidelines. Before making any changes to your health and fitness routine, we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified professional who can provide personalized advice based on your individual needs and circumstances. Elevate Your Ride and its creators will not be liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, special, exemplary, or other damages arising from the use of information on this podcast. Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. We are committed to providing high-quality content and appreciate your trust in us as a source of information for your health and fitness journey.